The spotlight certainly landing on tensions between old alliances. That's following Friday's release of that bombshell national security strategy by Washington that paints Europe as weak and facing civilizational collapse. We've already seen reactions from EU policy chief Kaja Kallas aiming to at least temper the situation, saying that Europe is the best chance of fighting against Russian aggression. Now EU Council President António Costa has hit back, telling the Trump administration not to meddle in or influence European affairs. Let's take a look.
Europe cannot accept the threat of US interference in its politics. That's according to the EU Council President António Costa, who on Monday hit out at Washington's recent ideological criticism of the bloc's trajectory.
The United States cannot replace European citizens in choosing which parties are good and which are bad.
His words come just days after the US released its new national security strategy, in which the current administration expressed disdain for the European Union and other transnational bodies, saying they undermine political liberty and sovereignty, migration policies that are transforming the continent and creating strife. The document also indicated support for the rise of far-right politicians in Europe, saying explicitly that the growing influence of patriotic European parties indeed gives cause for great optimism. Some members of the bloc, such as Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas, have sought to play down the criticism.
US is still our biggest ally, and there I read it as well that we are still the biggest ally.
While others, such as Polish President Donald Tusk, tried to remind the US that they share common enemies and that Europe is their closest ally, not their problem. Regardless, it is now enshrined into US policy Washington's intent to pull back its support for Europe, and that it also wants to see the NATO alliance stop perpetually expanding. It's a win for Moscow.
The nuance we see in the new concept certainly appeals to us. It speaks of the need for dialogue and building constructive, good relations. This is certainly appealing, and it's entirely consistent with our vision.
Another notable point that will have Europe on edge and Moscow satisfied is that the strategy does not cast Russia as a threat to the United States.
Let's unpack this now with Claude-France Arnould, Senior Fellow at the Brussels Institute for Geopolitics, also former head of the European Defence Agency, as well as France's former ambassador to Belgium. Thank you so much, Claude-France, for joining us. I wonder if you take the position of Kaja Kallas or of António Costa here. Do you believe that the US is undermining Europe's autonomy?
Yes, quite clearly. I think because the president of the European Council said something that is quite obvious. We always had kind of dilemma or double speech from the United States: be able to defend yourself, be independent, but at the same time buy everything you want to buy from us. Then that has always been the very strange language from the United States. Now what is new, and I think Costa's reaction was absolutely legitimate, is quite openly presented intention to interfere in our internal political landscape and life. That is, we at that level, and with the expressions that we have in the security strategy, the American security strategy, is really it's rather new. At least it's new to acknowledge it and to put it as a deliberate strategic objective.
Having worked in the corridors of power, you've seen US-EU relations, and you've seen how they've simmered, coming from previously the Obama administration, the Biden administration, Trump as well in between that. Is this anything new, or has it actually been simmering for a long time?
What is not new, and I must say that we must acknowledge that the Americans have been very clear since Obama, is to warn us be able to be non-dependent, to act by yourself. You should be now security providers. I take words heard from the Pentagon. You should be security providers, not security customers. Then again, we have been hearing this very clear message from the United States. We want to pivot to Asia and then do your job in the United States. During decades, that was the language even before I was in the European Defence Agency. And very few people accepted to listen to that and to take action according to this very clear message from Washington: be autonomous and be able to defend yourself. Again, now that is not new. What is new is to say some of you are good fellows and we will support, and you have mentioned quotes which are really incredible in this strategy, because a strategy is not a tweet. Normally it's something that is a very thorough examination of long-term strategy of big states like the United States. And let's imagine that our French strategy or the EU strategy, we would say that, well, we have great doubts about the American civilization, and we want to interfere to make sure that those who go in the direction we think good, we will support them by all means.
I think audacious is the word that we would use quite aptly here. In terms of who needs to win whose trust back, does Europe need to earn America's trust in terms of defense, or does the United States need to earn Europe's trust in terms of being a reliable partner again?
Yes, and I think we must have trust in what we do. I think there is something rather difficult in the present narrative from Europeans, is that as President Tusk very clearly said, we would be able to fight, and including to fight Russia, by ourselves without the Americans. Tusk was very clear that. I personally tried to also write some elements on this for the Brussels Institute. We, for the first time in its history, would Russia attack us, they would have all the European states that they had to fight in the past all together against an aggression. Then we are able to fight. And because we want to be able to do more, and we need to do more, you hear a narrative saying that we are not able. I think we must be clear, we are able if we have to, but we will nevertheless improve our capabilities to have an even stronger defense, including against rather new forms of attacks, such as the hybrid cyber attacks. Then we need to do more, but we are already formidable enough to deter any aggression, even without the United States. But I think what is really important now is that when we develop our capabilities, is that the objective should be to develop these capabilities with real non-dependence from the United States. And I don't know if the security strategy will be the necessary shock from some of our member states, but they see what dependence means. The weapons they are trying to develop will do just what the Pentagon wants them to do.
That's quite interesting, because it sounds to me like you're saying that Europe can, in fact, take a lead on NATO, just like the United States wants it to, according to the security strategy.
I didn't exactly say that, because I'm not sure that the solution is for Europeans to take the lead in NATO. We have to check whether NATO, which has been built for the American prevalence, the Americans being the leaders in NATO, could be efficiently transformed in an organization led by Europeans. For instance, the American ambassador in Berlin said, well, we should have a German SACEUR. I don't know. I rather well know NATO and NATO's functioning. It's very much built on this American backbone. Then should we take the lead in NATO? Many people think that. Another solution would be to take the lead in another format and make sure that our communication, our intelligence, our space assets would be independent assets, which is not today the case in NATO.
what would you then suggest in terms of that kind of alternative if you're looking at what's happened around Ukraine today?
I think that there's been a kind of natural reliance on those who can most and those who will do most. Then you have the UK, you have Germany, you have France, you have other EU member states having very good historical knowledge of the situation, which are very important. Then you have some actors with military capabilities and with military responsibilities at home that play an important role. You have them on the screen. But you have the Brits, you have the Germans, you have the French. You can have others. It's not exclusive. But then being in the situation where we are, I think it's more for those personalities to represent what Europe can build and the role we can play for a peace settlement, because it's our peace on our continent. It's not an American peace for us. It's our peace for Europeans. And I think we should rely on those member states or non-member states like the UK who are ready to take action. Nevertheless, nevertheless, use the EU instruments we have.
Just a quick one on that. What instruments in the immediate term?
Well, I think we have two instruments in the European Union that we didn't use their potential. On armament and capabilities, you have the European Defence Agency. I think it should really play a major role for cooperation, because we are going to increase the national budgets. We do already increase the national budget, but we will be successful only if we do it in cooperation. Then use the instrument you have for that. For armament and capabilities development, you have this European Defence Agency. Second, why don't we have permanent military headquarters with appropriate CIS, advanced planning, trained teams, which would be able to support any kind of either coalition or EU or national intervention that would be necessary. Then have headquarters. Headquarters, it's not only men. It's training, it's again communication and some capabilities that you need in advance for headquarters. And if it is a duplication with NATO, well, duplication are not useless if we consider scenarios of major disruption or war. Having 2 or 3 capable headquarters in Europe is just better.
A very fascinating prospect if that does come to fruition. Claude-France Arnould, thank you so much. It will be interesting to see if this relationship can in fact be fixed as well. But Claude-France, they're just discussing the possibility of European Defence Organization headquarters in Europe, military bases